Welcome back to the Living in Fort Collins YouTube channel. My name is Izzy Olson. If you are new around here, I'm one of Patrick's agents. I do a video every month, so make sure to go back and check those out. I think they're pretty good. You'll notice that Zach Jordan, one of our other agents, is in a lot of those videos with me, but he was a bit of a slacker this week, so you just get me. And today we're going to be talking about how to survive your first Fort Collins winter. This video is actually inspired by some clients that I'm currently working with. When we did their inspection earlier this week, right before we started, one of my clients asked the inspector, hey, what do we need to do to winterize our home? I haven't owned a home in Colorado in ages. And I was like, what a great question. And so typically I answer this on like a case-by-case basis with clients, but I thought how perfect would it be to give a video like this because we attract so many people who move here from out of state, and many are coming from places. These guys have moved here from Savannah, Georgia, but we have people coming here from Texas, California, all over, especially in the South where it's not getting to these kind of temperatures on a regular basis. And so I thought this video would be super helpful in helping you prepare for your first winter in Fort Collins, or if you haven't moved here yet, maybe just what it looks like to live a winter in Fort Collins. As a lot of people on this channel are, like with these clients actually, they were thinking of moving anywhere in the world. Like they told me they were considering Europe for a bit. And so the fact they landed on Fort Collins, Colorado, I thought was pretty cool. And they're probably some of the most diligent people I've ever met. And so for them to be so intentional in their choice and really had the flexibility and ability to go anywhere, I thought it was pretty cool that they chose Fort Collins. And so, but knowing that they had so many places to choose from, and so I know so many people who are on this channel have not moved here yet, and Fort Collins is one of their contenders. And so hopefully this video will help just give a little bit of insight to what a winter living looks like in Fort Collins. Before I start with these tips and tricks for living in Fort Collins during the winter, I do want to remind you that I am not originally from here or from this kind of climate. I grew up most of my life in Washington State, and before that grew up for 5 years, was born in London, England, so basically the same weather as Washington State. And so Colorado is very different in being dry and having way more snow and much colder temperatures more frequently. And so a lot of these are things that I learned personally. And then also before real estate, I was in property management for quite a while. So some of these tips are things that I used to have our tenants follow to make sure that the property stayed warm and no burst pipes or anything going wrong during the winter time. So the first one I learned pretty quick when I was taking the bus to CSU was to dress smart for the winter. You will find, and it's happened already while we've had a really mild winter this year. So while this video probably for most years would be a little too late to come out, honestly, with how mild this winter has been, if you have not already done some of these things, I would jump on it because you never know what February, March is going to hold. March is the snowiest month of the year, so we'll see what happens. So far it's been very dry and very warm, but I remember when I was a sophomore at CSU walking to the bus stop, and it was it was negative degrees and I did not dress warm enough, and then add the wind whipping through you, I was like, this is the worst. And so while it is a drier climate here, I think the lowest I've experienced is -17. While that sounds crazy, it's not as crazy as it would be in a more humid state. Because it's so dry, it really doesn't feel as cold. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, what's the difference between -1 and -15? Nobody knows. Besides your dog paws start freezing for sure. But one thing that's also so nice is with how close you are to the sun, you can feel the heat. With all of that said though, you need to dress smartly, because whether you go to a building for work or you do go to school or whatever it is that you do, even just me with what I'm doing today, it's important that when you're outside, you're warm enough, so you want to layer up, but knowing that all the buildings you're going to walk into are warm. And then also knowing that it may be 15 degrees in the morning and 45 degrees in the afternoon. And so being able to be flexible in the layers that you have so that you're not going to be too hot or too cold all day. I actually forgot my jacket after this. I have a bunch of errands to do, and I'm like, great, but it should warm up, so it should be fine. I would suggest, and I honestly, I still don't own a pair of hiking boots. Please don't tell anybody that's not watching this video, because I know that that's probably a sin living in Colorado and not owning hiking boots. I've always just worn my tennis shoes or whatever. I have not done any extreme hiking outside of just the ones in northern Colorado. But investing in good winter gear, because then you're not going to have to buy all the time. A good winter coat, gloves and a hat for sure. I love the Heat Exchange Heat Locker brand for hats and gloves, especially just being out walking my dogs all the time. But then a good winter coat and waterproof boots would be, I would say, is a must for sure. Places that you can shop for those things around here, whether you're like, I don't care how much it costs, or I'm balling on a budget. REI, obviously, we have one of those around here. The equivalent to that, Sierra Trading Post, that's going to be a cheaper alternative where you can still get the name brand nice things at a discount. We have a Jack's Outdoor Gear. That's probably one of my favorite places. You can also go there for camping stuff. Tons, I mean, all these places for all those things. Christie Sports, Second Wind Sports, and Atkins. These are all in Fort Collins and places where you can stock up on your winter gear. The next thing I want to discuss is driving prepared in Fort Collins when it has snowed. Now, while we really have not experienced any of that this year, this is the first time in 8 years I think I've lived here that I have, the winter has been as warm as it is now. So in general, driving prepared, what I mean by that is, first of all, many people who, like, Fort Collins is full of people who aren't from here, which is awesome, but it also means that there's a lot of people here who have never driven in the snow. My mother is one of those. She has driven, but basically in Washington State, because it's so hilly and they don't have the snow plows that they do, like the infrastructure that they do here, everything just shuts down in Washington State when it snows. So my mom just has been able to get away with not driving really in the snow. While in Colorado, that is not a thing. Things only shut down if it gets really bad in like schools maybe. And so understanding that other people on the road are not familiar with driving in the snow. And so adjusting your speed if you are someone who's like, I know how to do this, I'm comfortable, and knowing that it's going to take you longer to get places, not just because of the snow, but because of how slow everybody else is driving. Sometimes I'm like, guys, we can drive a little bit faster than this. But I understand it's really terrifying for some people, and so just being aware of other people on the road, and if you think that you can get to your local coffee shop in the same amount of time, the answer is you absolutely cannot. You need to account for just slower speeds, especially taking corners, things like that. So with that said, having winter tires or all-season tires is definitely recommended if you drive a truck. When I lived in Washington, I used to put those like cinder blocks in the back of mine toward the back just to help with spinning out. And one thing to know is that you don't need to, I mean, I've never had snow chains since living here. I've always had all-terrain, all-season tires, whether it was on my truck or now my Subaru. But it is good to know that the snow plows are starting to drop ice melt and salt on the roads before it even starts snowing. It's actually really cool when you see them out there. They're just really like big, huge machines with their blue lights. But then they do plow very consistently. I just think the thing to know and why it is important to have these tires is that whether you live in a neighborhood primarily full of rentals or you live in a multi-million-dollar neighborhood, you're going to have snow-packed roads just because of the lack of people driving on them, where the main roads and the highways, unless if we have a crazy storm, the snow is going to melt from those main roads because of the heat from the cars. But just knowing that to get out of your neighborhood, you are going to want to have those tires for the whole winter, because once it's packed like that, it's not really going to go away until it's springtime. But then also just having them for taking corners, and if you're going out when it just snowed in Fort Collins, you're going to be on some fresh powder. So having those tires is going to be really helpful. And lastly, something that I almost have all of this, is having a winter kit in your car. I've always kept a blanket in my car because just in case, but having a blanket, ice scraper, flashlight, some food, water, snacks, and a small shovel, just in case something happens and it does snow, it doesn't hurt to have a winter kit in your car just to keep you and your family safe. Okay, next, house maintenance. And this is the question that my clients had this week that kind of triggered this whole video. And it's something that I go over with people all the time, especially when I used to be in property management, because it's really important to take care of your home in this kind of climate, because some really serious issues can occur if you do not. And thousands of dollars of damage as well. So the first is, depending on the age of your home and insulation, and I will touch on that in a moment, you want to keep your home anywhere between 61 degrees and about 66 degrees at all times, especially if you're going on vacation. Personally, for me, after some of the experiences I've had, I'd probably just increase mine a little bit higher just to be on the safe side. But you also want to make sure if you have a thermostat with batteries in it, are they fully charged? Because that's something, just your thermostat dying could make or break your furnace working, and then pipes freezing and just like coming home to a mess. So making sure that your thermostat is always at that temperature, between 61 and 65. Like what I'm talking about is when you maybe are going away for the weekend or you're going out to work, maybe you're someone who sets your thermostat to a lower temperature just to save money during the day, and then you turn it up when you get home. But I would say at all times I would keep it between 61 and 65. The reason I have that range is for higher efficiency homes, 61 is great. We usually just tell our tenants above 60. For me, with the experience that I had when I was at my house in Wellington, it's like a 1960s build. It had very little insulation in some parts of the home, like in the roof, and my thermostat was set by the front door, and so it was working double time with the lack of insulation, and I had it set, I want to say at 64, but the home couldn't keep up with it being negative 15 outside. And so I did have a few pipes freeze, and luckily they're all PEX, nothing happened. But I think if you have an older home with less insulation, you don't want your furnace to be working so hard. Your furnace is already going to be working so hard. So personally, I would be more comfortable keeping my house at a warmer temperature just in case something were to happen. However, if you live in a home like now, so then I got new insulation in my home, and it's not like the thermostat is not working nearly as hard. So that's kind of why I have that range, is just older homes versus newer homes and your insulation. Getting a furnace service, I would highly recommend. Typically, we like to do this for a lot of our properties around October time. There's tons of companies around Fort Collins that will do it. We always give our clients a list of vendors after they close for vendors they can reach out to that we trust to do work on their home. But they'll basically they'll change your furnace filter if it's needed. It most likely is, unless if you're really diligent in changing it. But then they'll also just check and make sure your furnace is working efficiently, because you don't want to find out that it's not when it hits really low temperatures, because most of the time that's when everyone else finds out, and so you're going to be on a list of furnace or HVAC maintenance people coming out to your home. So with that said, having space heaters handy. When I was in property management, I had them in my car at home all the time, ready to take to tenants in case the furnace went out. Now, a perk of property management is we have great relationship with our HVAC vendors. They'll get out for us that day, or but sometimes if it happens at nighttime, we're just going to run them space heaters, keep the house warm, keep the pipes warm. That's the most important part until we can get someone there. But if you are a homeowner, something that I think tenants don't realize sometimes is that you usually have to wait longer for an HVAC tech to come out, just because of availability and just a lack of rapport with them and them having multiple other people to service. And usually they're going to put bigger companies first just because they're a huge clientele, right? So having space heaters on hand is really helpful just to put in front of the important areas. The year that my pipes froze and my house was like struggling to keep up with the temperature, because like it was also an old leaky house. It had new windows, things like that, but still pretty leaky. So I had a space heater in front of my sink, which is where it froze. But I also had my oven on and I had the door open. My cat loved it. So that's just what I had to do. But having space heaters is nice because you can put them in the rooms you need, but then definitely putting them in your bathrooms and your kitchens where your pipes are is super important. Speaking of pipes, so one thing that is good, especially when it gets really low temps, like in the negatives, is I would have a slow drip coming out of your faucets, and I'm talking slow drip. And what I just learned from my clients this week who told me a horror story about something that happened to their winter cabin is to make sure that there's no plug in that sink, because you could come home to a serious mess. So making sure that the water can go down the drain, having a really slow drip, and then opening the cabinets is helpful too, just because it can help the heat circulate, the heat that's circulating in the house get under the cabinets and under the sinks as well. So I personally used to do this in my Wellington house when I was going out for the day and it was really cold. I had my cabinets open while I was gone, but then when I came home, I shut them because I checked everything and everything was fine. But that's just being a little overcautious. But especially if you're going on vacation, I highly recommend you do that. Once again, I'm just going to stress again, check those thermostat batteries, change them if you need to, but make sure sometimes when you change the batteries, you want to make sure your thermostat is still working right after that, because there can be issues with that. And it doesn't help to have a friend check in on your home if you're going to be gone for a couple weeks, especially if it's going to get to those really cold temperatures. You also are going to want to blow out your sprinklers. We also do this, I mean, it depends. This year, everyone was doing it a bit later just because it was so warm, but having it done, it really depends on the weather. You don't want your grass obviously to die because of lack of water, but you also want to do it before the first freeze. So typically we do this, I want to say around October time, and then you can get them, so you want to get them blown out so all the water pushed out of the line so that nothing freezes and breaks. And then you can start your sprinklers up again. Usually it's after Mother's Day is when we typically do it. You also want to make sure that there's no hoses attached to any of your faucets outside. Also at this inspection this week, we were in an unfinished basement, and it was clear that at one point the sellers had not taken the hose off, the hose bib, because when you looked inside of the finished basement at the hose, there was a burst in it. And so obviously the water is off. It's not a big deal right now. And it's not a big deal while the water's off until in the springtime you go to use it and it's going to get everywhere. Now, the beautiful thing about an unfinished basement is you can see that. It's very obvious. Now, you're going to be able to tell just because the water's not going to come out of the faucet easily, but how much of an easier cleanup in an unfinished basement than a finished basement or a completely finished home. So that is a very important one. I've never seen a bursted pipe due to something like that, but on this inspection I was able to. Pretty easy fix, but can be so easily avoided if you just make sure you keep your hoses unattached from your faucets. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use them in the wintertime. I usually will use them later in the day if I need to. But you just need to make sure you unattach it so that it doesn't freeze. It's safe to just not use it if you don't need to with the hoses, but yes. And with that, you want to also have your gutters cleaned out. Now, you don't have to, but it really sucks if you forget and then it snows and then it melts and you just have a whole mess. So if you just want to be extra diligent, having your gutters cleaned right before winter really starts, that can just make cleanup help easier, but also it can just help with drainage and just things not overflowing, and then now you have ice on your sidewalks because your gutters overflowed and didn't come down this downspout. So that's just something that's helpful with home maintenance as well. And last is snow shoveling. Having some rock salt or ice melt to put on your pathways is nice. But with shoveling, if you live in Fort Collins, you are required to. You need to at least do your sidewalks. That is, Fort Collins Code of Compliance will come down on you if you do not. You have to do it within 24 hours of the last snowfall. And so Patrick did a video forever ago on this. It is easier to maintain if you do it more often than just wait for it to dump and then do it. Now, if it freezes, that's when it gets pretty hard. So the more often you do shovel, the less likely you're going to have a frozen driveway and frozen sidewalks, because once that snow packs down, it's pretty hard to take it off. Now, some people I know use a regular shovel, others use the like electric or other ones, gas powered. My neighbor used to do it, and he used to do a bunch of our sidewalks up in Wellington. It was really sweet. But whatever you do, I would shovel them. It makes it just easier and safer throughout the winter because, like I said, once it does pack down, it's there all winter. So like nothing sucks more than walking out to your car with like a thing of coffee and eating it because you didn't shovel. And last thing about shoveling and driveways, if you have a home or if you have not bought a home, consider a south-facing driveway because the sun is just going to spend more time on that driveway. It's so funny in the winter when you go show homes, it is so obvious when you look at the south-facing homes versus the north-facing homes, and they still have ice and everything on their driveways. Their driveways are still in the shade while we're on the other side in the sun with the completely melted driveway. So south-facing driveways are going to be a benefit for you as well. Next, with surviving your first Colorado winter is just keeping healthy, which I think if I was doing this video for Washington State, I'd have a lot more to say on this. Colorado makes it so easy with just how sunny it is over 300 plus days of the year. So even if we're in the dead of winter, there could be clear blue skies, not a cloud in it. We've literally had that for weeks and weeks and weeks now. And so while typically, obviously, there is less sun in the wintertime, so getting that vitamin D is important, so either supplement it, but there's so many opportunities to go outside. There's so many things you can do outside, which I am going to touch on next with outdoor activities. But I would just say that because of how dry it is here, because of the sun, because of how sunny it is here, you can still go do all your favorite things. Things don't have to stop just because it's snowing. It's so beautiful too. Like even just taking a walk around your neighborhood, it's good for the soul, but it's also just it's beautiful and just something I love about Colorado. Staying hydrated is super important. It is so dry here, and then add the winter to it. it's impossible to stay hydrated. So have your lip balms, I would have like carry around some kind of water thing. I like to put lemon in my water because it makes it taste a little bit better. And yeah, just staying healthy in that kind of way is important. But Colorado makes it so easy with it being such a outdoor lifestyle kind of area, and that's what everyone else is doing. I mean, like most people, I wouldn't say, are held up in their home all winter unless if they choose to. There's so many things you can still do outside, and taking care of yourself through the winter is important in terms of hydration and just like for example, in Washington State, so many people suffer from pretty severe depression that is related to the weather and how dark it gets during the winter time and when it's rainy for legit months on end. And so people have to medicate because of that. Where in Colorado, it really still is so beautiful and so sunny, and there's so many things you can go do. It's not raining all the time, and when it's snowing, you can still go do super fun things. So even if you're not like, I don't ski, I don't snowboard, I don't do any of those crazy things, but I do horse ride and I like to take my dogs out. So doing things like that in the winter is so much fun and it's so beautiful. Last, embracing outdoor activities in the wintertime. So many people move out here to Fort Collins for lifestyle and outdoor activities. And even people who are moving from places like Texas and Arizona who are like, we're just inside all winter, or all summer, we're just in the AC. And what I love about Colorado is truly you get 4 seasons, and there's not a reason to be stuck inside for a single season, which I love. And so obviously skiing and snowboarding, you do need to drive a little bit further away to do those things. And if you are like looking for big, I don't even know the lingo, so like forgive me, but if you're looking for like big slopes or like more intense, then you're gonna need to drive at least like an hour and a half, 2 hours away. If you are curious on that, me and Zach and I did a video on Colorado weekend getaway, so check that out for just places to go. But if for things like snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, ice skating, ice fishing, fat biking, if you don't know what that is, I'll explain it. All those things can be done here in northern Colorado. A lot of them are in Fort Collins, LaPorte, Bellevue, Hoedown Hill in Windsor. You can go sledding as well as skiing. It's just like a lot more low-key, but awesome, especially if you've never skied before or you want to take your kids out there. It's super low-key, it's in town, it's not like this whole trek, to get to the mountain. But you can go snowshoeing at Cameron Pass and Laurie State Park, and they do provide gear rentals. And there's so many spots all over northern Colorado. If you want to go to visit Fort Collins and then just look up winter activities, it'll give you a list and addresses for so many places to check out. And it will distinguish between if you need to have your own gear and your own experience, or if they're going to have guides and or rentals. Cross-country skiing, rentals are available local around here. Sledding, you can go to the Epic Center or Hoedown Hill in Windsor. Like I said, you just need to check their websites before you go. Ice skating at Sheldon Lake, you do have to have your own equipment and know what you're doing, as well as Epic Center also does ice skating too. You can go ice fishing at Sheldon Lake. That sounds so fun. You do need to have your own equipment for that. Fat biking, Laurie State Park and Cameron Pass, and they do have guides who can help you with that. Fat biking is basically you're riding a bike with ginormous tires that can go on the snow. So it honestly sounds really fun. I've had some friends who have had those bikes and love doing it. And then you can also visit one of the 26 breweries in Fort Collins, or literally do most of the things that you do all year round in Fort Collins, because the snow doesn't really shut things down. With the city's rules of having to plow and shovel, you can still go out on your walks and enjoy them. And then just with the weather here, you can do so many things still, as long as you just dress properly, which takes me back to my first one. So making sure you have the right clothes, because I remember growing up, I just feel like I never had our family didn't do a lot of the snowboarding and skiing thing. So we didn't have the super nice winter gear because we weren't going out and doing those kind of things. But once in a blue moon, when my friends would be like, come sledding with us, I was miserable because I never had the right clothes and I was always getting wet. So waterproof, super important, and just get some nice stuff just so that you get to enjoy what Colorado has to offer, because it is one of the biggest perks of living here. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, like I said, we are slowly or maybe rapidly becoming relocation experts here in northern Colorado. Our team is a little team of 5, small but mighty, all different personalities that you can work with. And so if you're considering moving to Fort Collins, if you're visiting Fort Collins and have questions or want to meet up with one of us, we'd love to meet you. DM us, text us, call us, email us, whatever you want to do. Patrick's information is probably at the bottom of the screen, but I'm going to try getting mine. But you can email me at izzy@soukuprealestate.com. Find me on Instagram. Izza, Izza lifestyle. Is a lifestyle. I think it's Is a Lifestyle Baby is my name. Or it might just be Is a Lifestyle. Either way, that's my Instagram name. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed. If you miss Zach, I apologize. I'll make him feel guilty for not being on this video, but I'm sure he'll be here next month if he makes it. Just kidding. Have a great week. Have a great month, y'all.